A Maine delegation calls on the DOJ to help with illegal marijuana operations, you guys. After a series of busts of illegal Chinese-owned marijuana growing operations in Maine, the state's congressional delegates are now calling for more help from the federal government. In a letter to the U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, Senators Susan Collins and Angus King, as well as Representative Chelly Pingree and Jared Golden, are renewing their call for more support from the U.S. Department of Justice. They sent a similar memo to Garland last summer in response to alleged illegal Chinese-owned marijuana growing operations in Maine. And according to the delegation, police have seized more than 4,400 plants in 4 different busts just this year alone. In a quote, the letter says, "We write to follow up on our August 2023 letter regarding reports of a memo that was produced and circulated by Border Patrol officials over alleged illegal Chinese marijuana growing operations in the state of Maine. Since that time, there have been multiple raids across the state. Since the beginning of this year, police have arrested 8 people and seized more than 4,400 cannabis plants at 4 growing sites in Belgrade, China, and Cornville, Maine," the delegation said. Apparently, China is a city in Maine as well. The letter also states these 7 different points. 1, what is the DOJ doing to address illegal growing operations, including illegal growing operations that are run by foreign governments or entities? These reports identify Chinese ownership. Is the DOJ aware of this alleged Chinese ownership or any other foreign involvement in these operations? Number 3, are the profits from these illegal operations being returned to the country of origin? If so, through what mechanisms? I would say Burisma, but nonetheless. And number 4, please provide any additional information about the memo identified in these reports, including who produced it, when the information contained in the memo was first obtained, and what actions have been taken in response. Number 5, what action is the DOJ taking to swiftly shut down any illegal marijuana growing operations in the state of Maine? And number 6, what support is the DOJ providing to Maine law enforcement agencies, state, county, and municipal, as they work to identify and arrest those participating in illicit activity related to illegal marijuana growing operations? And number 7, what, if any, additional support does DOJ need from Congress to support Maine law enforcement in these efforts? In the memo, the lawmakers are also asking what action the DOJ is taking to address these operations and what support the Department of Maine is going to need going forward. Well, it seems like there's a lot of, sounds like big trouble growing in Little China, but maybe they're just calling it Maine China. And this is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News. What do y'all have to say about this? Crickets, huh? Interesting.
I guess they're not affected by fentanyl, so they have their priorities straight.
I mean, I'm guessing too they're not affected by the border crisis.
They're keeping the main thing.
Well, they have a different border crisis, right?
Apparently.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not up there, so I don't know. I don't know if I would be calling on the Department of Justice to help out with any kind of anything,
right?
I feel like, well, first of all,
enforcement at all.
Yeah, the DOJ doesn't really do a whole hell of a lot, at least under this administration, unless it's
wonder,
producing kangaroo courts. Yeah,
I wonder if this is not a cash grab, because typically when states ask for support from the federal government, that support includes money. And so I'm wondering if they're not trying to get the DOJ to get some boots on the ground so they can do some interagency task forces, so they can break down some barn doors and take some pictures of some plants being cut down, and then they can say it has a street value of $250 million. And then back to our point from a couple days ago about the militarization of law enforcement, they can get a couple cool tanks and battering rams. And, this is, Saman already talked about it earlier on this show about the prison industrial complex. My first take, without having enough facts to have a really learned opinion, is that this might fall under that dynamic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just want to say, I think this is a pattern. It's when you have a state that was medical that goes adult use, and there's a lot of medical caregivers that are operating under the auspice of the existing rules. That migration to the new rule set and the new taxation is kind of the whole pathway, right? And so I feel like this is just more of a corralling and like almost like a cattle drive of tax dollars that they're trying to drive back into their coffers by doing this, because these people that are operating, I mean, most of them are caregivers. They have some form of documentation. They're not just completely doing it off book, and some of them are, I'm sure. But I think that is a pattern that I've seen coming from Colorado in the early days to coming to California, and we're seeing it now. California is just like, it's just bigger, and it's more rooted in, as opposed to like some of these other places. So I just see this as a pattern. We're going to see more of this. We're going to see, hopefully not the DOJ get involved without some kind of formal federal regulation change or some shift there. But I mean, this is just keep your eyes up, because this is exactly what's going to happen in all of these other states that were medical and that are converting to adult use.
Yeah, I don't see why they're getting the federal.
I do.
It doesn't make any sense.
I understand why.
If they wanted to do it on a state level, if they wanted to really do some damage on a state level, could they not just call on the National Guard to do that?
No, they can't, because the National Guard is not
Texas.
trained to do these types of law enforcement actions. The National Guard is trained for floods and hurricanes and crowd control and putting up barricades on big streets. The thing is, and I think you two have both already
barbed wire.
Barbed wire. Eloquently touched on it, is what does the DOJ bring in terms of capabilities that it doesn't exist at a state or local level in Maine in terms of law enforcement? Are they going to put a big satellite in the sky and listen to every mom and pop home grow in the backyard, or everybody blowing up a barn with a bunch of gavitas? So I think it's probably money. That's what the feds can bring.
It's always about the money. It's always about the money. I agree with you, Yarrow, on that.
You can see where all the grows are at.
I'll tell you what,
if they just went legal, and they'd get money from taxes, right? So just let it flow.
I'll tell you
what.
If they do crack down on this, you know what that's going to mean, right? That's going to mean that the price of weed is going up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's happening.
Is that really the angle?
Yes. The price of weed is going to go up. That is.
I mean, I just wish that somebody in Maine understood the connection between the munchies and lobster with butter drizzled over the top of it, and understood that, like, cannabis and their cash cow, what they're known for, what everybody wants to eat from it, those go hand in hand. Fine dining and fine cannabis. I think there's something they could explore there that might be more uplifting.
Yarrow, it sounds like
Maine is doing it. I mean, I encourage all my co-hosts here to check it out, but like people in the audience may know, but Maine is actually one of the best producing states on the East Coast, I would say.
Yeah, they got good weed.
I got a homie out there. Shout out Third Shift Resin out there, my boy Ryan. He's crushing it. And they do all organic indoor. Living soil. They do outdoor as well, and they crush it. Some of the Eagle Clash winners in the past have been, Depths or Greenhouse from Maine, from outdoor in the past year.
Yeah, we need to go. How about Maine stops calling on the Department of Justice, go out there and make things right? They need to call on the High at 9 news team. We need to go out there. We need to be funded for a trip to go out there to Maine and see what's what. We'll sort it out. And Jason Beck will let them know
got some people
if it's
out
good
there.
enough to go to the streets.
Oh yeah, I got all the people,
bin.
all the people in Maine, all the people, you guys.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I think this is gonna. I'm telling you, the price of weed's gonna go up in Maine if they do this, and if the DOJ if the DOJ gives the state of Maine some money for enforcement, then the price of weed is gonna skyrocket in Maine.